The interview you're about to see is our second interview with the Mayor of the Tees Valley Combined Authority, Ben Houchen. Fascinating for all kinds of reasons. Just some of the topics that we talked about: the Durham Tees Valley Airport update, the Freeport, which, if it comes off, will be the first in the UK in our area, Jackson's Landing. Will Hartlepool ever get onto the list of the most improved towns? Hartlepool Hospital, some interesting things there. Fracking and the import of shale gas from the USA and how it directly affects our industrial plants. Our water table and emissions. The millions that the Tees Valley Combined Authority has already ready to go to invest in the area. And even an update on our bid for the Rugby World Cup to be held right here in Teesside, and what we can expect in 2019. I tell you, some really interesting stuff. Don't miss a minute. We're here at the Tees Valley Combined Authority with Mayor Ben Houchen. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for this second interview. We really appreciate it. We think it's just so important to keep the residents of Hartlepool updated.
Definitely.
Because there is so much happening that directly affects everybody in the town. Can we just start and touch on a couple of points in our last interview, just to give everybody a quick update?
Yeah, of course.
The airport, is it still called Durham Tees Valley? And how's it going?
It is at the moment, yeah. It's still called Durham Tees Valley. Things continue to progress. It's still an awkward and difficult discussion to have. We've obviously got the NDAs in place, but we're hoping to have a resolution shortly. But let's not be under any illusion. I'm still 100% behind this plan, and we still plan on taking back control of our airport. Ultimately, we're going to get to a point where I think a deal can be done. That's not to say it definitely will be. We're still discussing things with Peel. But we also have an additional hurdle that whatever deal I do bring back, we're going to have to get the support of the 5 local authorities. So even if I do a deal with Peel, the 5 local authorities, in theory, can still block the plan to buy the airport. So we have a number of different stages still to get through. Still got to do with the deal with Peel, so that's not done yet. But if that is done, we've still got this other big hurdle, which ultimately means the 5 leaders of the local authorities could, in theory, veto that. So that's the second hurdle we have to tackle. So that means a really strong plan, really strong rescue plan, and a financial plan that shows a 10, 15, 20-year turnaround with passenger numbers going back up, with new flights to destinations that people want to go to. And we're going to have to objectively show to the 5 leaders that this is the right thing to do, which I think it is. But we also need their support. So that's certainly something that the people of Hartlepool should be aware of. We were looking back through some of the old archives, and this probably gives away my age a bit, but we found a pamphlet from 1997 for the airport, and it had a list of destinations. It was marketing paraphernalia, basically. And it had direct flights to places like in Spain that you would expect, Lanzarote, Ibiza, etc. But it had 2 direct flights, one to the Dominican Republic, direct from Teesside, and another that I didn't realise, again, because I was 11 at the time when this pamphlet came out. But in 1997, you could go direct to Florida from Teesside Airport. And it just shows where Teesside Airport was and what I think it could be again.
You were 11 in 1997.
I was.
Oh, right, okay, moving swiftly on. Freeport.
Freeport, yes, things are going very, very well. Some people may have seen, although I appreciate most people have more of a life than this. I was sat in London watching the budget, and the Chancellor announced that we are getting a special economic area for the Development Corporation.
I know, I'm going to ask you about that
later.
So
it's the first of its kind in the UK, and I see that as basically the first step towards establishing free ports in the UK.
So this will be the first one in the UK?
It's the first special economic area ever in the UK, and I see it as that first step to a proper free port. So it just shows that we are at the front of the queue. So if we do get free ports in the UK, Teesport is right at the front of the queue to take advantage of that.
Awesome. The Rugby World Cup, how are we doing?
Well, we've submitted the bid. Some of your viewers will have seen that. There's a lot of coverage in the Gazette about it. We've had their assessment committee up. They came up in October to assess the venues, whether it be the football club, Brockcliffe, the training ground, all of the bits in our bid they've come up and assessed personally. And we should find out at the end of the year whether we're going to be successful in hosting some games in the World Cup, and hopefully, fingers crossed, one of the top teams, whether it be Australia or New Zealand or England, at Rockcliffe Hall for the Rugby League World Cup. So we'll find out either very end of this year or January 2019. But within the next couple of months, we're going to know whether we'll be hosting what is a fantastic competition. But it's not just about the rugby, it's also about the businesses, it's about the people coming here, spending money in our local shops, putting money into the local people's pockets, which is important. So it is a good thing to do, but I think the other thing to emphasise is that, 3 years ago we wouldn't have even dreamt of applying for this, never mind being in a position where we could really get it, and I'm hopeful that we will get it, but it just shows the journey that we've come on, that we're in a place.
And the impact of the Tees Valley Combined Authority.
But we have a confidence in ourselves, and I'm able to stand there and say, no, well, we should be bidding for these things. Why shouldn't we get it? Why does it have to go to Birmingham or Manchester all the time? Actually, the Tees Valley is a great place to be, and it's got some great things to be able to show off.
The Tees Valley Combined Authority put out a good news press release just recently, which we actually republished on Hartlepool TV. A couple of things from that. The Hartlepool waterfront plans get the go-ahead, and this is obviously for the Jackson's Landing rejuvenation.
Yep.
Do you guys have anything to do with that? Is the funding coming from here, or do you have any input with that?
Absolutely, we've funded the whole project so far.
Because it wasn't clear from the article in the Mail.
It never is. It never is clear, unfortunately. But what is clear, that all of the plans that are being developed have been financed by my office. That's what we've put forward to that. Now, Hartlepool Council are a key partner in that, so they are doing some of the work on our behalf, but we have funded the whole thing. And the plans are progressing, and that will be transformational. It'll do to Jackson's Landing what the marina did back in the day. It'll be brilliant for the area if we get it right.
I know people.
But it's a big if. We've got to get it right.
Well, yeah. Well, see, this is my next question, because I think the major concern of people is trying to get it right, because they've just built a reinforcement to the headland. It didn't last 100 days. And big bits fell off in the first major storm. How are you going to ensure that there's quality work and it's carried out correctly?
So we do have a detailed process that we don't just hand over money. We make sure that it's being spent properly and on the things that it should be spent on, and by people that know what they're doing. So the headland had nothing to do with us. We put no money into it.
No, I'm not.
But there's probably a reason why it didn't last very long. Whereas when we give money to Hartlepool Council, of which we've given more than any other local authority, we give very close attention to who they use, what it's spent on, when it's spent, how quickly that it's done, to make sure that those types of things don't happen with taxpayers' money.
Okay.
It's difficult. We've got to trust in our local authorities.
I know, that's difficult.
But the thing is, ultimately, if we want to see things happen in Hartlepool, and I really want to see things happen in Hartlepool, then I've got to fund it, and we've got to work with the council. And in some ways, Hartlepool have done very well out of us. I mean, we spent £18 million already in Hartlepool, more than any other Tees Valley area. But on top of that, something that again people don't know about, because the council obviously don't advertise it, is that we've got more than £39 million worth of projects in the pipeline for Hartlepool. That's a huge amount of investment.
Well, I know, because this is my next question in your good news release. You had there were two towns that were amongst the most improved in the UK. That turned out to be Middlesbrough and Stockton. And this is compiled by the Good Growth for Cities, and it's health and amenities and one thing and another. When did you think we'll see Hartlepool on the list?
Well, soon, hopefully, because it can't just be about Middlesbrough and Stockton, which often the Tees Valley is seen as Middlesbrough and Stockton. But we've still got Darlington, Redcar and Hartlepool are all intrinsic to the success of the Tees Valley. It's the reason why we funded so many projects in Hartlepool, because it is intrinsic to the wealth and the advancement of the whole of the Tees Valley. What we can't do is see each area as standalone. We're all part of the same community. We're all part of the same thing. And if we all want to succeed in life, we need to work more closely together. And actually, Stockton and Middlesbrough, who have historically done very well, need to work more effectively and support projects in Hartlepool, and we're doing well to convince them that we should be investing money in Hartlepool and not always in Middlesbrough and Stockton.
Right, and I'm glad you said that, because I had a little bit of flack from our last interview, because I didn't really bring this up enough.
Okay.
By far and away, the number one issue on the doorstep is health.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can do to bring back a hospital to Hartlepool? Because we need a hospital.
Well, yeah, we do need a hospital in Hartlepool. People won't know this, but before I was elected as the mayor, I was a councillor in Stockton, and we were having the same fight in that they were trying to close North Tees Hospital completely and move the new hospital to Wynyard.
Yeah.
And the whole plan was to close Hartlepool as well, bring it together. Now, ultimately what happened was James Wharton, who was the MP for Stockton South before the last election, put a stop to moving North Tees Hospital because Labour wanted to move North Tees Hospital to Wynyard, which we know everybody was against.
Yeah.
The big impact that wasn't felt across the rest of the Tees Valley that was acutely felt in Hartlepool is that people didn't realise that over a long period of time, Hartlepool had run down their services on purpose, ready for the new hospital. But now we're in this horrible situation where the new hospital didn't happen, and rightly, but we've got a hospital in Hartlepool that isn't providing services to local people. And I don't see a plan coming from anybody to try and ramp those services back up to make sure local people are looked after. Now, unfortunately, at this moment in time, I don't have responsibility for health, so that still lies with the local trust and to some extent with the local authorities. But that is something that needs to be tackled. But for whatever reason, there is no political will to fight that fight. And whenever I speak to people about it, they kind of glaze over and say, we've lost that fight, it's not going to happen. And I just don't think that's good enough.
No, it's not good enough. We are desperate for a hospital in Hartlepool, and everybody says the same thing. So if you're down in London at any time you can put in a good word, please do so.
But that's again, I know the people in Hartlepool are really well educated on this, but that's the history of it. The history of it was Hartlepool had a hospital, and it had a very good hospital, a very good hospital. But for political reasons, somebody wanted a big shiny new building in Wynyard, and it was that triggered the reduction in services at Hartlepool.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's responsible for that, and I can't pretend I don't know who made that decision, but somebody knows, and somebody made that decision, and that has had a horrible impact on the residents of Hartlepool.
Yeah. And they're still winding down services even now, because we've got to think about the birthing unit we're looking into.
That's right. Yeah.
Another, I don't want to be this
No, don't worry. No, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Fracking.
Yes.
Are there any plans at all to bring the contentious issue of fracking into the area?
So let me be very clear on this. There will be no fracking in the Tees Valley.
Okay.
There is no proposition to bring fracking to the Tees Valley. There never has been. Nobody ever supports that. One of the things that came out recently, which is why this is a bit more of a nuanced position, is that we already import into the UK and into Teesport actually huge amounts of shale gas from North America. Obviously, the Americans have gone full on fracking. It's reduced energy costs. It's done lots of things for their economy. What people don't realise is a lot of that gas, because they've got so much of it, they export it to the UK. A huge amount comes into Teesport for the North Tees and the South Tees, the chemical industry. So your Sabics, your Semcorps, they all use shale gas. Now, they don't burn it, so it's not about burning it and putting it into the atmosphere, which obviously people don't want to see happen. But actually, when you go to Sabic, they use that gas to turn it into other products. And if you go over to the chemical industry and you speak to the Northeast group of chemical companies, they say that fracked gas, so shale gas, is vital to the maintenance of jobs and businesses on that site. So the thousands and thousands of people in Hartlepool who are employed in the chemical industry and in the processing industry are wholly reliant on shale gas. Now what we're saying is, and what I'm saying is, that we should make sure that we support our local businesses and support local jobs. Yeah. And all of the local authorities agreed that fracked gas was vital to our local economy and that we should support that. Now, I know they're looking to row back on that, but if anybody's interested, they can go on the website, they can see what's been approved. Local authorities, every single one of those leaders approved that plan. What we're not saying is we're not going to frack, but we should get the benefits of fracking because we can use that gas to create the brilliant industries that we have in the local area. So I know that's a bit more of a complicated picture. These things are never black and white.
No, it's always very complicated.
But actually, if we stop shale gas tomorrow, which, let's be honest, I know this is a political point, but the Labour Party are saying they would stop altogether, that could put at risk thousands and thousands of jobs in Teesside. Why would we want to do that?
Yeah.
We want to put money in people's pockets so they can look after themselves and their families.
I totally agree. Is it true, because I really don't know the sort of ins and outs of it, is it true that fracked gas is cleaner than like coal and everything?
It depends what you use it for. So again, if you burn it, it's still burnt, it releases carbon. It's better than certain forms of energy, but it's still releasing carbon into the atmosphere, which is obviously not where we want to be long term.
No.
But what we're talking about is you don't burn it, you literally separate out the particles and you turn it into ethanol, you turn it into all sorts of products that go into the manufacture of plastics, that go into the manufacture of all sorts of goods on the chemical side. So you don't burn it, you literally take the particles and it goes into things, which means it has no impact on the environment per se in that sense, if you use it in the chemical and processing industry, rather than the energy industry, which would burn it.
Got it, Okay.
But again, I know I keep saying this, we will not be fracking in the Tees Valley.
Okay, that's great. There is deep concern, and Hartlepool's all about health at the moment, on the street. It's about the integrity of the water table, the emissions, soil. I mean, just this last week it was announced that there was going to be another paper recycling plant, and it's right in the middle of Hartlepool. It's not that far from residential areas. Do you have, or is there like an independent body that goes around checking emissions, water table, soil samples, or can we get one?
So when it comes to the environment generally, which obviously has an impact on health, the government have actually run a really detailed study on emissions within the air and air quality. Now the Tees Valley is named twice in that document, so there is work to be done. And we're looking at what those results mean and what we need to do about that, because that is extremely important to us, because it has an impact on people's health. We've also just launched, and this is not going to happen overnight, it's going to take a couple of years, but we are here putting together a waste strategy for the Tees Valley. So we're going to bring into one place all of the Tees Valley's waste and process it properly, cleanly, and not in a way that is damaging to the environment.
And not anywhere near residential areas.
Well, this is all part of the strategy to make, but also use it for things like fuel, recycle it. So rather than just burning it, you can actually reuse a lot of that. There's a brilliant business that I was over at the Wilton site only yesterday. And they think they have a process where you can recycle plastic. So we talk about plastics being bad for the environment. Actually, you can recycle them into brand new products. So we're looking at what should our waste strategy
look like. I know, but what
like.
Emissions are given out in that process?
Well, this is the point that it's kind of a next generation thing where it doesn't release any emissions into the atmosphere, and it can be reused as if it was brand new material.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we've also got some other brilliant businesses. I visited J&B Recycling in Hartlepool. And yes, they are in Hartlepool, and yes, they do recycle waste, but they do a brilliant job of separating it out, recycling it properly, and making sure that emissions and there is no leaching and there's no problems with the environment. So it's one thing to say, we need a better way of doing things. We can always do things better, but actually Hartlepool's a pretty good exemplar through things like J&B Recycling, and Vicky, who owns that business, who has now just been appointed to our local enterprise partnership. So she's going to help actually mould our own policy on this. Great examples of how it can be done properly, and it can be done properly in Hartlepool as well.
Now you see, this is what's great about this interview, because people in Hartlepool would never have known that otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not being given enough information like this.
Well, people should always shout loudly about J&B Recycling, and particularly Vicky, who owns it, because they're a brilliant business. She's been there, started it from scratch. It is a brilliant Hartlepool business, and it's informing how the Tees Valley does things.
Excellent. You were recently down in London, canvassing for the region, just before the Chancellor gave his budget. Mm-hmm. What was that experience like, and how successful were you?
We were very successful in that everything that we asked for in the budget we got. So we've been working for many months now.
What was it like when you were down there? I mean, was it really cool and everything?
I absolutely love this job. And I always wanted to go into politics. I always knew that politics would draw me in. And if the electorate decided to elect me, then that would be a nice place to be as well. And I've been given the very fortunate role of being elected. And it's always something I thought I wanted to do. But until you're in the job, you never know whether it's quite right. Is the grass always greener? Is it what you expected it to be?
True.
And I can honestly say that this job is everything I thought it would be and everything I hoped it would be. And being able to do it for my local area, where I can spend most of the week, except for the time I have to spend in London, in the area, doing things for local people and helping local businesses, I couldn't dream of anything better to do. I really couldn't.
And you obviously were successful.
We were very successful, and going down there and being able to speak to the Chancellor, the Prime Minister, Secretaries of State, other ministers, to be able to say this is what Teesside wants, and then ultimately to see that delivered in the budget is something that I'll forever be proud of.
That's fantastic. And as this year closes, what were the highs and lows of this year for you?
Well, the high probably came last week in the budget, where, again, for all of the noise that certain people make, in the last 12 months alone, for the South Tees Development Corporation site that covers the old SSI Steelworks site, the government in the last 12 months have given us £137 million for that site. Now, that's not small beer. No. They're not crumbs off the table, as some people would like you to think. £137 million is a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And that will now start to see the remediation of land, getting them ready for investors, managing the site. That just also shows that government have put faith in our plan and said, we believe you, and therefore here is a massive cheque to be able to deliver on your master plan. So that is definitely the highlight. The frustration for me is still that we're working on the airport. I obviously wanted to deliver this as soon as possible. These are complex negotiations, but I will be forever frustrated until we come to the end of that process. But hopefully we'll be sat here in 6 months' time and I'll be able to say that the highlight of my whole tenure will be to deliver the airport. That's where I want to be, and that's where I still plan to be.
And I was just going to ask you, hopefully we can do this again in the new year.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
thank you so much for your time, and thank you for letting the people of Hartlepool know everything that's happening here, because it's really crucial.
Pleasure. No, thank you for coming in again and giving me the opportunity to speak to the people of Hartlepool.
Thanks.